Not every tajweed rule can be quantified or measured, but this device can actually do that for a specific tajweed rule, ikhfaa. This contraption can help us understand the concept of ikhfaa better, but most importantly, the results we get out of it can help you avoid the most common mistake among learners and reciters, even the professional ones. But how's that? And what does this do? Well, to understand how this thing works and how it can help us improve your recitation, let's first make sure that you understand the basic premise of ikhfaa without confusing it with idgham, since this is a quite common point of confusion. Now, when nun sakinah is followed by any of these letters, we apply ikhfaa, which is to hide the nun. And on a side note, hiding something does not mean making it disappear. So basically, the shadow of the nun is still there. This shadow, so to speak, is the ghunnah, the nasal sound of the nun, which will always be present, just like you can get rid of your shadow even when hiding. That's why we say al-insan, while essentially hiding the nun, and only its ghunnah is present. Al-insan. So the nun is hidden, but its shadow is present in the form of the ghunnah. And this is also the major difference between ikhfaa and idgham. Ikhfaa is hiding the nun, as we just said, but idgham is assimilating it. So you essentially mix two sounds together to make one sound. مَن يَعْمَلْ مَن يَعْمَلْ مِن لَدُنْهُ مِن لَدُنْهُ. So the nun and the ya became one sound in the first word, and in the second, the nun and the lam. Now, when we compare that to the case of ikhfaa, the nun is a separate sound from the letter that follows it. There is no assimilation whatsoever. We are just hiding the nun. Al-insan. However, what ikhfaa sounds like, so basically the sound of is not the same for all ikhfaa cases. So the ghunnah of the nun is affected by which sound comes after it. But then, how much of a difference between the cases of nun are we talking about? Well, this is exactly where this device comes into play. This is a Nasometer, and it has many clinical applications, and it is also used for speech and phonetics therapy. Its main function is to measure how much air is being emitted through the nasal cavity in comparison to how much air is coming out of the mouth when speaking. And this is done through these two sensors or microphones. Now, a researcher from Cairo, Egypt, decided to run tests using this device to measure professional reciters' performance of ikhfaa as they recite properly. And the results were quite amazing. The average results showed variation in how much ghunnah is produced when nun sakinah is followed by each ikhfaa letter. The best part is that these results are quantified, as you can see. 100% being all the air coming out of the nostrils, so a pure ghunnah, and 0% being all the air coming out of the mouth, so no ghunnah whatsoever. And so, the ghunnah in the case of kaf will emit about 96% of the air through the nostrils, and the rest through the mouth. While in the case of ta, about 60% of the air will come through the nostrils, while the rest will come out through the mouth. But then, why are these results amazing? Well, first, Muslim scholars of tajweed came to the exact same conclusion 1,000 years ago. For example, Al-Imam al-Dani described in his book that the degrees of ghunnah, of ikhfaa, differs according to the articulation of the following letter, describing the letters that are further away from the articulation point of noon to cause more ghunnah to accompany the ikhfaa case. So he came to the exact same conclusion without devices or sensors, which tells you the incredible accuracy with which these scholars delivered their knowledge and how deep they had to go to describe every aspect as perfectly as possible. But wait a minute. How are we supposed to measure 96% ghunnah, 74 or 60% while we are reciting? That is just impossible. Well, first of all, these numbers are not the gold standard, since these numbers are average, but they surely give us a clear indication. Second, you are not supposed to measure 91 or 92% ghunnah or so on. Certainly not. But if you apply a certain technique, you will, insha'Allah, achieve this accuracy without even consciously putting that in mind. And so, to teach you this technique, we'll start by tackling the two most obvious candidates, kaf and qaf. Simply because if you go from almost 100% ghunnah to around 60%, the difference would be noticeable and audible. And as it happens, these two cases of ikhfaa are the two most commonly mispronounced for both reciters and learners. We'll first hear the mistake and understand what causes it. Afterwards, we'll learn the proper technique, and then we'll apply the same principle on all the other ikhfaa letters. This is not how you should perform ikhfaa with kaf and qaf. Minkum, minkum, man qal, man qal. So what happened here? Well, simply I let more air out of the mouth than I should when performing the ghunnah. While as we should know by now that for the cases of kaf and qaf, ikhfaa should have an almost complete ghunnah, so more air coming out of the nostrils. Minkum, man qal. But how can you achieve this, even if you can't exactly hear a big difference between the two performances? Well, by applying this technique and following the steps. Step 1. Determine the positioning of your tongue when pronouncing the letter coming after the noon sakinah. In the case at hand here, the kaf. So, the back of the tongue is raised and touching the soft palate, as you can see, which produces the ka sound. And the sound is produced when the tongue and the roof of the mouth part ways. Ka, ka. Now, for step 2, I want you to hold the position of the tongue as if you are about to pronounce the kaf, but not quite. So right before the ka, when the air is behind the tongue. So touch the back of the tongue to the soft palate and hold that position. Step 3. While holding, start running air through the nostrils. Try elongating that sound to save that muscle memory. Now finish the movement with the rest of the kaf. Kum, kum. That's basically how you perform the 95 or 96% ghunnah of ikhfaa of the kaf. Minkum. The same process is with qaf. We determine the positioning of the tongue, which is again the back of the tongue against the soft palate, but a little bit deeper. We hold the position right before we release the air, so right before the qa. While holding, run air through the nostrils to have the sound of ang, And now with finishing the sound, أنقض. So essentially, your ghunnah is preparing for the following sound, and in doing so, it picks up some of the traits of the following letter. So in practice, these two should sound like this. وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ الَّذِي أَنْقَضَ ظَهْرَكَ. You might not get it the first time, which is fine. Navigating your tongue and being conscious of its positioning and controlling it might take some time. Now, if we need to apply this concept on all other ikhfaa letters, you won't need to worry about any other detail on how you perform the ikhfaa. Basically, this technique fixes all your problems at the same time. For example, did you know that there is a light ghunnah, muraqqaq, and a heavy ghunnah, mufakham? If you apply the proper technique we explained, you won't even need to think about this concept, since it will already be taken care of. For example, we say ansab with a light ghunnah, since the sin is a light letter. But we say al-sar, since sad is a heavy letter. And to achieve this result, we'll simply apply the technique we learned, which then enables us to pronounce the ghunnah correctly in accordance with the letter that follows. In the case of sin, the middle part of the tongue is slightly raised, causing a light sound. And when applying the ghunnah of ikhfaa according to the steps that we learned, so while holding the position of the tongue, it will cause the ghunnah to automatically be empty mouth or a light ghunnah. Ansab. But in the case of sad, the back of the tongue is raised and the middle part is lowered. And so we apply ghunnah with this anticipation, which will automatically enable you to produce a heavy ghunnah even without deliberately thinking about it. Now listen to these two sounds. Can you guess which ghunnah belongs to which of the two words? Listen again. Al-sar, ansab. So, when the ghunnah properly prepares you for the following sound, you will produce an accurate ghunnah that ticks all the boxes. Hearing the difference is the first step of improving. But even if you can't 100% hear it yet, you should still apply the technique, and in due time, inshallah, you will start hearing and applying it perfectly. And if you are looking for a demonstration for every single ikhfaa case with mouth movement, then check out this lesson on our second channel, Vocals. I left the link in the description. If you found this video to be useful, please interact with it by liking, commenting, or sharing it. This helps increase the visibility of our lessons. Thanks for watching. If you want to start learning the tajweed, then start with this playlist. And also, don't forget to check my latest book about tajweed and download the companion app. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.